Hello, this is John Keith here, Jonathan Keith. A lot of people just call me Johnny. Um, I want to give an introduction to what it is that I personally practice and what I define as left-hand path chaos magic. And I briefly want to talk about exactly how I got started. Well, back when I was in high school, I used to be heavily embroiled in conspiracy theories, which to me was pure occult information. And at the time, I was obsessed with what they call the Saturn conspiracy, what they call Saturn is Satan, so on and so forth. Saturn is the demiurge. And over time, that really wasn't doing a whole lot for me, and only left me in more trepidation and fear, and caused me to have a lot of problems, such as convulsions, constant paranoia, shakiness, so on and so forth. And I discovered something, Kabbalah, which a lot of people are familiar with, which is based on a glyph called the Tree of Life, which has all the major planets on it, 10 of them, from Earth to Pluto, in different spheres that actualize different functions of reality, I guess you could say. And the Jewish-based system, and what got me into it was the astrological attributes, because I had just gotten into astrology and I started to notice zodiac sign traits in people. And that really got me into it, and I looked at it and I'm like, but how do you use it? And how could I use it in my life? Well, I saw online one of the seven hermetic principles, or the first one, is that everything in the universe is mind or mental. And I was just like, oh, so why don't I just think about how this spirit, this pathway, is going into me, and that's how I learned how to do invocation, is just with that. And I would just simply think about it and think about those energies coming in my body, and just be like, whoa, I didn't know I could feel like Taurus. I didn't know I could feel like Scorpio. And that really fascinated me. But then after a while, that just dropped out, and I was still having a hard time with my life. And all of a sudden, I discovered a group called the Order of Nine Angles, which is a satanic organization. And they have this system called the Tree of Vard, which I still practice to this very day, among mainly 5 other pantheons. And they called their deities or demons, whatever, god forms or deific masks, which I'm going to get into. They had different sigils, different renamed tarot cards, and they had a system. Instead of having 10 spears and 22 pathways, they had 7 spears and 21 pathways in it, having the first 7 planets from Moon to Saturn. And in between those pathways are the various dark gods. Now, some people may be familiar with mainstream Judeo-Christian demon names like Satan, Lucifer, Belial, Asmodeus, and later on I got to experience all of those as well, which are vastly different than the dark gods. Because, on a brief note, that all these different pantheons, a good way to look at them is different food groups, and each will give you a different kind of nutrient, and that specific deity, I guess you could say, could be like a vitamin, but I'm going to get into that later. And they had all these different names I never heard of before, like Karo Samzu, Adazoth, Shugara, and I got fascinated in the imagery and symbolism, and reading the philosophy of the Order of Nine Angles. It was very similar to stuff that I've been inspired by all my life, which is the individualist or egoist ideology. And I'm going to get into that later in another video about how the left-hand path represents the egoist principle in reality, and why it's important. But and I got deeply fascinated, and at the time I just said that I really like how this looks, and I started to try it, and to me it felt a lot better than the Kabbalah, and it felt right up my alley. And all of them just felt so different and unique, and made me feel what you could call like a badass, basically. And I went from fat, lazy, depressed to charismatic, fit, attractive, persuasive, physically fit. In about 6 months difference. And this was back when I was 20. I'm 26 right now. And ever since then, I've found other pantheons that work for me, such as well, my top 5 pantheons would be Ahrimanic, Archonic, the Necronomicon deities. Actually, I'd say top 6. Yes, and the Egyptian. But those are some examples. But anyways, I'm going to do videos on all these different pantheons, and I'll also cover the Qliphoth as well, and other videos. But I want to talk about what chaos is, what chaos magic is, and the different types of them. I'm not going to talk about how to do it in this one, because this is just an introduction to it, but we'll get right started and right into it. So let me describe what chaos is. So, chaos is what you could call simply the universal mind. Chaos is all thought at all times, because, like the first Hermetic principle, all of the universe is mind. And so everything you see around you is what you could call a form of a thought. Like, for example, let's look at fashion, for example, on women. The way that they present themselves, the colors they use on their nails, and what they wear, and the colors on those represent a form of a thought. Another good example is music, art, so on and so forth. All of those things are forms of a thought. And this applies also, and very, very specifically in this context, religion. Now, all of these different pantheons are forms of a thought. All of these different deities, of which you could call god forms or deific masks. Another very, very common term is archetype. They are forms of a different type of thought. And their name, their appearance, and how they've been perceived in the culture they come from are no coincidence whatsoever. at all, because that is very, very specific to the type of thought that they represent. And that's why they are the way they are. Now, a good way to think of chaos is the night sky. Chaos is usually thought of as just infinite darkness, as just complete night. People call it the void, which is a term that I like to use a lot. And in Greek mythology, chaos was actually the first deity, which was represented as being feminine and didn't have an anthropomorphic form, like Aphrodite or Medusa, and was just there, which, from my own experience from invoking chaos as a Greek goddess in the past, most deific masks have a type of feeling to them, but for me, chaos simply didn't feel like anything at all. It just felt like pure emptiness with just like a touch of this instinctual feminine concern to it, and feminine impulse, just pure feminine impulse. And other than that, I didn't really feel anything from chaos whatsoever. That's been my experience. Chaos is usually represented as a circle with 8 arrows going in the south, southwest, the east, the northeast, the north, the northwest, and all 8 usual directions. And so basically, since chaos is all mine, it manifests our reality, and we as human beings have access to it, which is what makes magic possible in the first place, which makes the use of magic something that's natural, and at the same time, the way we humans handle magic, it is completely unnatural and is completely mechanized by the way we use it, whether we use it in meditation, through thinking, or we use physical phenomena such as candles or statues, which personally I'm of the former. I personally don't use any physical phenomena myself, but I'm going to get into that later on. And so basically chaos is an all-encompassing principle, but why it's called chaos in the first place is because it has no rhyme or rhythm, and just simply manifests as it is, or emanates as it is, and that's pretty much what chaos is that it is very much so all around us right now. Another author that influenced me highly is Peter J. Carroll with his book Liber Nolan Psychonaut, which is an introduction to chaos magic, and he pretty much talks about it as that, but we as human beings can't really perceive everything that's in chaos right now. But however, there are specific points that give reference to it, and so therefore that's my definition of chaos. Now, to talk about and get into a little bit more detail are what we call deities. As I explained before, what that's basically is a form of a thought. And so it represents a type of thinking. It represents a type of emotion. Various different things. Now, deific masters, there are many, many different classes, depending on what you want to use. A person could um, work with Jesus and demons at the same time. It really doesn't matter. It's all up to you. Like there's famously Thomas Carlson. He had a baptism at a Lutheran church or Protestant, and he actually defined it as having the gnosis or knowing from Christ Odin, who was the primary father figure of the Norse pantheon, and put the two and two together. And so you could do whatever you want. Now, depending on the deific mass, depending on the god form, depending on the pantheon, depending on all those different factors, they're going to make you feel differently. They're going to make you feel differently depending on what the deific mask is. So, like for example, they all have different elements, different traits to them. Some of them will make you feel physically bigger and burlier. Others feel lighter and faster. They'll impact you differently in different ways. Like I've had experiences where I'd invoke multiple deific masks, and then I'd activate it back on, and it would change the way that I ran and improved it based on the deific mask. So they'll all make you do things very differently. But they all could be invoked for any purpose whatsoever. It really doesn't matter. But for specifically what you want, it's good to experiment with deific masks. Read about it first, and over time, through practice, you could just see the name of a deific mask, and you already know what it feels like. From my understanding. And so, with deific masks, you could do a whole lot of things with them, which is primarily, it's the basis of magic. It's using your mind to access a form of a thought. And you don't even need to use god forms. You could just use elements, planets, which are also considered a type of god form, I guess. You could use elements, planets, abstract concepts, which is in the Kabbalah, and its reverse side, the Qliphoth, and the Order 9 Angles Tree of Ward has some of that in there as well, pertaining to abstract concepts. So, and also, to talk about, very briefly, the difference between what someone would call dark or light. Now, an author I really enjoy, Michael W. Ford, and the reason why I like his works is that he just gives you the bare bone. He just gives you the pantheons and the circles, and that's all that I need, and that's why I enjoy his work. That's why I always use the term deific mask. Now, basically, when you think of a deific mask, a good way to think of them are like Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh cards. They all got different traits, different elements, so on and so forth whatsoever. Now, in the context of dark and light, Michael W. Ford writes, you could either choose your ego, your true self, he calls it the daemon, true will, or whatever, and you can make your total self into either becoming either more demonic or angelic, or what I'd like to consider in between deific, like Egyptian and Greek. Now, there's different types of dark, actually, as I see it, and I'm going to make separate videos about these pantheons. For example, archons, devas, dark gods, and Necronomicon deities, all four of those are abyssic. They are the darkest of the dark. The darkest of the dark. And in that darkest of the dark, we have the dark gods, which are very similar to the three others. And as we go down in the list, we have Necronomicon, Archons, and the Devas from Zoroastrianism, or the left-hand path, Ahrimanism, which Ahriman was basically the devil in Zoroastrianism, if you could think of it that way. And all three of those are the furthest away of human thinking. They have nothing to do with personhood whatsoever. Nothing about them feels like talking to a person or a person whatsoever. And I especially feel that from the Devas. I feel that from the Archons as well. And Necronomicon are just downright alien. Downright abstract. And, so we get into the lighter side of things a bit, like Egyptian gods, Greek gods, Mesopotamian, parts of the Canaanite pantheon. Those feel very, very similar to human consciousness, to personhood, in a sense. And then we got the opposite, or the supposed opposite of the Devas, known as the Yazads, or angels, which the good god in Zoroastrianism was Ahura Mazda, which are like them, very, very similar to Greek and Egyptians, have qualities of personhood, but also to them is a sort of more alien type of quality when we get into the angelic of just razor sharp stoicness, in a sense, in the most abstract sense of the term or verbiage that I'm referring to. And so basically that's what I have to say about deific masks in Dark and Light. And so in summary, deific masks, you get what you want. And I'm going to go over the various ways to work with them. Alright, so I want to talk about internal magic. Now, in internal magic, it's all about becoming a better person and actualizing yourself. And it's all about actually absorbing and gaining those qualities into your being. And over time, as you invoke deific masks, as you practice chaos magic, as you invoke them, you become a lot stronger. And that's what internal magic is. And what it does is that it causes a process called individuation, which, when we've taken all these forms and thoughts, and it brings us to our total self, we become more distinct from other people, and we become self-actualized when we practice a religion, in short. So, basically, and that process builds up over time. Now, you can customize yourself in an infinite number of ways. And this internal magic affects you in every way, including your aura, and ways to use it, and ways to utilize that aura that you have, and your personhood. And by the term aura, I use it in a vague sense to describe a more abstract concept. I guess you could say the air around you. And you could use that air to persuade people. And all of a sudden, you gain different abilities. Like, simply at points after a deific mask, you could just, after invoking a deific mask, you could simply just command. And it expands over time and it builds up. For me personally in my life, since this is an introduction, I have a condition that's no longer a diagnosable form of autism called PDD-NOS. And that's had various symptoms all my life, which my family has tried to work with how to deal with, school, and throughout time, nothing has been more beneficial than chaos magic in order to deal with those symptoms. And over time, I have gained control and I have overcome various challenges dealing with those symptoms. And from that autism, if a traumatic event happens, I could get a type of fidgety form of PTSD that I've noticed. And I've only noticed it when I've invoked deific masks. And over time I've overcome those difficulties. And at this point in this video is at the peak of that progress right now. And so internal magic could be done with deific masks in a number of ways. For example, consuming them, which is purely a left-hand path blasphemous act, which is the bulk of what I practice. And through visualizing the deific mask and your body ingesting that energy, you all of a sudden just feel a lot better, more pumped up, more self-aware through ingesting that energy. And another way to do it, internal magic, and work with deific masks, and both of these consuming, and what I'm about to talk about, making packs, could also work both ways and be considered internal, which also encompasses the bulk of what I do, but I'm going to get into how to consume them and how to make packs in another video. And basically in a pact is that what happens is that you ask for something that you don't want and replace it with something that you do want. Now, let's say, for example, you give up smoking to make more money, and you make a pact with whoever. It doesn't really matter. It's all up to you. It depends what you want and how you want to experience it. In the proper form, the proper linear equation of how you want to experience things. And so what happens is that you'll just not want to smoke. Period. You'll all of a sudden go for one and see one, then you just stop. Then you just stop. And all of a sudden things become a lot better over time. And in the process of internal magic, invoking deific masks, one's quality of life greatly improves, and it'll be miraculous, like things are going right all the time. But a lack of practice is very, very detrimental, which is part of the way, part of why people have always said you gotta believe in something, or certain people have. Well, that's what my father's always said. But, yeah, so, basically, invoking deific masks greatly improves one's quality of life. And, I want to talk about external magic. Now, external magic is either invoking deific masks or using physical magic to make alterations or changes on your reality, something you want to affect, relationships that you want to make better, getting a girlfriend, getting more money, getting a new job. Those things you could definitely program internally and manifest it. And so how external magic works. Let's say you invoke a deific mask for a certain purpose, which is something I usually do. What happens is that supplements inside of you, and you get that thought right programmed in your subconscious, which manifests through chaos. But that's doing things internally. Now, you could take that very same thing, make a sigil, and charge it. Now, the thing about making a sigil versus doing an invocation is this. If you do an invocation, basically chaos is relaying your thoughts constantly and is concretely manifesting as you go along, and as how the perception of how you want things to be, how you truly want things to be, revolves around chaos is constantly manifesting that. But if you make a sigil, chaos stamps that desire into reality. It just is there, and you can't change it, especially if you put your blood on a sigil to charge it. Now, let's say an experience that I had a long time ago when making a sigil is that I made a sigil saying that I want to party at Kent State, a party with women at Kent State. Or I said I will party with women at Kent State. Or I wrote down something that reflected, and I ended up using all of the letters within these words, because what you do is you cross out all the repeating letters, and you're left with whatever you have left over as letters, and use them once to make a picture, which is a physical representation of a desire. Now, you could also make sigils of deities. I've made good luck charms. I only make sigils during terms of emergency. But what happened is that I ended up crossing out all the letters in women. And I went to Kent State with my brother, and we were having a heated debate, divided struggle at the time where we didn't get along. Then all of a sudden we just magically got along. And I went down to Kent State with my brother. But I didn't have the experience I was looking for, because I made the sigil completely off. Now, that might sound like a funny story, but for me it was a very terrifying experience, and showed a very harsh reality. And so with external magic, when you make it physical, you gotta be very, very careful and know exactly what you're doing. And you should invoke a deific mask beforehand to make it certain that you do it right. And that concludes what I have to say about external magic. I hope everyone enjoyed this video tonight. And I'm going to be making more videos, but I want to talk about the results of practicing the left-hand path in my own life. In my own life, I tell myself every night that I've worked very hard to get to feeling with how I feel. Because all my life I've had lots of different nervousness. Like when I was in high school, I was very much bullied all the time. I always wanted to get along with what you call popular kids, and I always looked like a bit of a weirdo. I was always into classic rock, or as you could see, I'm a very big metalhead. I play guitar. I have another YouTube channel called The John Master, where I've been recently uploading songs, and I haven't done that in a very, very long time. And just basically when I invoke deific mask, everything just falls into place. And there was a big invocation, or a big result from a very small invocation where I invoked Yaldabaoth, which is the demiurge from Gnosticism. And after invoking Yaldabaoth, or I invoked people who I know to come together to benefit me, my bike was stolen. Then I got on the news. Then everyone came and donated to a GoFundMe to get me a new bike. And I got a new bike plus $2,300. And that was just from a very small, brief invocation that I did in the restroom at work, because I do this all the time, and I do it when I can. And I do it when I can for a very good reason. So, this was my introduction, and I hope it makes people curious, and I wish everyone have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much for watching.